The stars outside the ship's window were quiet, cold and distant, much like Carthan's heart. He sat alone in the corner of his small cabin, his eyes fixed on the swirling galaxy beyond. His long fingers trembled slightly, though no one was there to notice. Carthan was a Zoran, a species known across the stars for their perfect logic, emotionless minds, and strict order. They believed feelings were a flaw, something dangerous that led to chaos. For thousands of years, the Zoran lived without emotion, without comfort, without kindness. But Carthan was different. He was born with something no other Zoran had ever shown: empathy. He noticed pain in others, heard beauty in silence, and, sometimes late at night, he would hum to himself, a soft, strange sound that carried no purpose yet made him feel warm. The elders called him defective. They said he was a danger to Zoran society. Emotion leads to weakness, they declared. You are broken. Without trial or defense, they exiled him. His only companions now were a small ship, a few supplies, and the endless dark of space. Carthan had been drifting for many days. He had stopped counting. There was nothing to count for. He pressed a button on the control panel. A soft light filled the room, and a recorded message began to play. It was his final message to the Zoran Council, but it wasn't words. It was a hum. Gentle, full of longing. A sound that meant nothing to his people but everything to him. He listened to it again and again. It was not a cry for help. It was a cry for understanding. The ship's food supply was low. The systems were working, but not for long. Carthan didn't care. In his mind, he had already vanished from the universe. He was just a forgotten echo floating through the stars. But the universe had other plans. A small, blinking light on the control screen caught his attention. He leaned forward slowly. It was a signal, a scan. Someone had found his ship. Carthan's heart raced. Was it a Zoran ship, coming to erase him, or something worse? He didn't know. Fear and hope mixed inside him like fire and ice. He didn't move. He simply waited. Moments later, a voice came through the communicator. It wasn't Zoran. It was softer, warmer. Unidentified vessel. This is the human ship Dawnbreaker. We picked up your distress signal. Do you need assistance? Human Carthan had heard of them. A new species, not part of the Great Alliances. They were emotional, unpredictable, and wild, or so the Zoran had claimed. But the voice did not sound wild. It sounded kind. He reached for the communicator. His hand paused. He had never spoken to another species before. What would they think of him? What if they were like the Zoran? Still, a small part of him whispered, "Try." He pressed the button. I am Carthan, alone, exiled. I do not know what to do. There was a short silence. Then the voice replied, "That's okay, Carthan. We'll come to you. Just stay calm. You're not alone anymore. Not alone." The words felt like a warm blanket in a cold room. As the Dawnbreaker approached, Carthan stood by the airlock, unsure of what to expect. Would these humans laugh at him? Would they fear him? Would they cast him out like his own kind? The hatch opened with a hiss. 3 humans stepped in. One woman with sharp eyes and oil-stained gloves, one tall man with a gentle smile, and a short person carrying a medical kit. They looked around, then at Carthan. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the woman said, "You look like you've been through a storm. Name's Marla. This is Torres and Jamie. We're here to help." Carthan didn't understand. Help? No one had ever offered that before. Not even once. "I do not understand," he said quietly. "You will," Torres replied, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Give it time." And just like that, Carthan's long exile took a new path, not toward fear, but toward something he had never known before. Hope. Carthan sat quietly in the common room of the human ship Dawnbreaker, Everything around him felt strange. The walls were not cold metal like his own ship, but painted in soft colors. Small lights blinked gently. A quiet hum filled the space, but not from machines. It was music. He didn't understand the purpose of it. There were no commands, no logic, no pattern to follow, and yet it made him feel something. Calm, curious, safe. Marla, the engineer, handed him a warm drink. "It's called tea," she said. "Helps when you've had a rough day." Carthen looked at the cup. Steam rose from it in soft curls. Zoran never drank warm things. Heat was a sign of imbalance. Still, he lifted the cup carefully and took a small sip. It was strange. Bitter, but pleasant. It didn't hurt. It soothed. "Your systems were barely holding together," Marla said, sitting down across from him. "You patched them with fiber tape and... was that glue?" Carthen looked away, feeling embarrassed. "I did not wish to die." Marla smiled. "That's a good start." Across the room, Jamie, the medic, was checking some equipment while humming a tune. Torres, the pilot, was at the controls, setting course for the nearest human space station. They had accepted Carthen like he belonged. No fear, no anger, no judgment. This confused Carthen deeply. "I am not one of you," he said after a while. "Why help me?" Marla leaned back in her seat. "You sent out a distress signal. That means you needed help, and we don't leave people behind. Human thing." "But I am not human," he replied. Marla looked at him kindly. "That doesn't matter. You're alive. That's what counts." Later, Jamie sat beside Carthen in the medical bay. "We need to run a few tests," Jamie said gently. "Nothing painful. Just want to make sure you're okay." Carthen nodded. The medical scanners beeped softly as Jamie worked. Unlike Zoran doctors, Jamie asked if he was comfortable. Offered him water, smiled. "You're the first Zoran I've ever met," Jamie said. "Is it true your people don't smile?" Carthen hesitated. "We are taught that smiling is useless. It shows emotion. Emotion is weakness." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "Strange. To us it shows strength. You're sharing a piece of yourself." Carthen looked down. "I used to smile. As a child. Before they told me it was wrong." Jamie's voice softened. "Sounds like they were wrong, not you." The words hit Carthen like a quiet wave. No one had ever said that to him before. That evening, the crew invited Carthen to the dining room. The table was small but filled with warm food and friendly conversation. Laughter echoed through the room. Light and easy. Carthen sat quietly, unsure how to join in. Still, he listened. The crew told stories. Funny, silly, sometimes sad. Torres talked about a time he flew into a space storm by accident. Jamie told a joke so bad even Marla groaned. Then they asked Carthen to share something. "I have no stories like yours," he said slowly, "but I can hum a song." Marla smiled. "We'd love to hear it." So Carthen closed his eyes and let the soft hum escape his lips. It was a tune he used to sing when he was alone, simple, slow, and full of wonder. When he opened his eyes, the crew was silent. Not out of confusion, but because they were touched. "That was beautiful," Jamie said quietly. "It made me feel like I was floating," Torres added. Carthen didn't understand. "It is just a sound." "No," Marla said. "It's a gift." Later, Carthen stood alone in the hallway looking out the window at the stars. They didn't feel so cold anymore. He thought about what Torres had said earlier. You're not alone anymore. Could that really be true? Back on his homeworld, he was called a mistake. But here, with these humans, he was being treated as a person. A guest. Even a friend? Carthen wasn't sure if he was ready to believe it, but he wanted to. And that was something new. For the first time in many rotations, he didn't feel like a lost traveler. He felt like he might be on the path to something better. He placed his hand gently against the window, the stars reflecting in his eyes. He didn't speak, but inside his mind a quiet thought formed. Maybe this is what home could feel like. Carthen sat at a table in the corner of the Dawnbreakers' common room, watching the humans as they laughed and talked. He still didn't fully understand them. They used smiles, hand movements, and strange changes in voice when speaking. To the Zoran, language was direct, cold, and efficient. But humans, they added something extra. Emotion. Marla noticed Carthen watching and walked over, carrying 2 small cups. She handed him one and sat across from him. "You like watching people, huh?" "I am trying to learn," Carthen replied. "Human language is complicated." Marla chuckled. "It's not just words. It's how we say them, what we feel when we speak. That's why emotion is so important." Carthen tilted his head. "But how can you trust emotion? It is not logical." Marla thought for a moment. "Maybe it's not always logical, but it's real. When someone is sad, you comfort them. When they laugh, you laugh with them. It's how we connect." Carthen stared into his cup. He remembered the last time he showed sadness. A Zoran elder had told him, "Hide your weakness." But here, weakness didn't seem to exist, only people trying to understand each other. Jamie invited Carthen to the art room, a small space filled with colors, shapes, and odd human objects. "We paint here, or draw, or build stuff," Jamie explained. "It's not about being perfect, it's about expressing what's inside." Carthen picked up a smooth, flat brush and stared at the blank canvas in front of him. "I do not know how." Jamie smiled. "There's no right or wrong way. Just try." Slowly, Carthen dipped the brush into a soft blue color. His hands moved carefully. He didn't think. He just painted. When he was done, the image was strange. Half-formed stars, a distant planet, and a small glowing figure floating alone. "It's beautiful," Jamie said, looking at it. "It is me," Carthen whispered. Jamie nodded. "Then it's more than beautiful. It's honest." Carthen didn't smile, but he felt something inside. Warmth. Not from the ship's heat, but from being seen. Over the next few days, the crew showed Carthen many human things. Torres taught him to play a simple board game. He lost every time, but laughed with them anyway. Marla shared music, soft piano songs and upbeat rhythms. Carthen found one he liked. It had no words, just feelings. One evening, as they all sat around the table, Marla asked him, "What do Zoran do for fun?" Carthen thought carefully. "We study. We test our minds. We improve our knowledge." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "That sounds hard." "It is supposed to be." Torres leaned forward. "But don't you ever just sit and enjoy something? Not for learning, just for happiness?" Carthen shook his head. "Happiness is not a goal in Zoran culture." Marla looked sad. "That's a shame. Everyone deserves happiness." Carthen looked at them. "I am beginning to think I was born in the wrong place." Jamie reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "Or maybe you were born to bring something new to your people." That night, Carthen sat alone in his room, listening to the human music Marla had given him. The soft notes made him think of the stars, the silence of space, and the strange new warmth growing in his heart. He hummed his old tune again, the one he had sent out into the void. This time, it blended with the music in the background. He imagined others singing with him. He didn't feel so alone. The next day, Carthen brought something to the common room, a small speaker from his own ship. He connected it to the human system and played a Zoran tone. It was soft, strange, and filled with quiet emotion, something his people never admitted they had. Then, he added the human music behind it, slowly mixing the two. The crew listened, quietly. "It's like the stars are talking," Marla whispered. Carthen nodded. "This is my language. And now, it has learned yours." Jamie clapped softly. "You just made something no one's ever made before." Torres smiled. "That's what humans do. We mix things, create new paths. Carthen finally let a small smile form on his lips. It felt odd but right. For the first time in his life, he wasn't hiding who he was. He was learning to speak not just with words, but with emotion. And the humans listened, not with fear, but with friendship. Carthen stood on the Dawnbreakers bridge beside Torres, who was focused on the glowing screen in front of him. Outside the ship's window, space was darker than usual. Thick clouds of cosmic dust swirled in the distance. Lightning flashed between them like fire across the sky. "We're entering a charged nebula," Torres said. "Old mining zone. We can't turn back, we have to pass through it to reach the nearest station." "Will it damage the ship?" Carthen asked, studying the storm with calm eyes. Marla walked in, wiping her hands with a cloth. "If we're careful, we'll make it. But if we lose power in the middle of that, we're going to have a bad time." Jamie arrived a moment later, carrying a small pack of medical tools. "Everyone okay?" "For now," Torres replied, "but it's going to get rough." As the ship entered the nebula, the lights flickered. The hum of the engines turned into a deep rumble. Outside, energy storms danced like wild beasts, striking against the ship's shield with loud cracks. Carthen watched silently. He felt something rise inside him. Not fear, but something close. Concern for the humans, concern for his friends. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. A bright flash hit the left engine. Sparks flew from the control panels. "Left thruster down," Torres shouted. "Stabilizers offline. We need to shut the grid and reset it manually," Marla said quickly. "I'll go to the engine room." "I'll help," Carthen said without hesitation. Marla looked at him for a second, then nodded. "Let's go." The hallway to the engine room was dark and shaking. Pipes hissed, panels sparked. Carthen followed Marla, holding onto the wall for balance. "You've handled systems before, right?" she asked as they ran. "I studied starship mechanics as a child," he replied, "though only in theory." Marla grinned. "Well, today's your hands-on lesson." They reached the engine room. Smoke filled the air, and the emergency lights flashed red. Marla opened a panel and began disconnecting wires. "Pull that lever," she shouted over the noise. "Then hold it while I bypass the conduit." Carthen moved quickly. The handle was stuck, but he gripped it tightly, using all his strength. The ship jerked again. He almost lost his balance, but held firm. "Done," Marla shouted. "Now release it. Slowly." Carthen followed her words exactly. The power core glowed brighter. The engines began to hum again, steady, strong. Marla looked at him, smiling. "You did great." Carthen felt his chest rise and fall, not from fear, but from something new. Pride. Back on the bridge, the systems flickered back to full. Torres grinned. "We've got power." Jamie sighed with relief. "Good. I was starting to prepare for crash injuries." Marla and Carthen returned, a little dirty but unharmed. "We're through the worst part," Torres said. "Nice work, both of you." Carthen stood beside them and looked out at the fading storm. In Zoran society, danger was met with silence and duty. No one praised, no one thanked. But here the crew worked as one. They shouted, they helped, they felt, and they survived. He had never seen anything so strong. Later that evening, the crew gathered in the lounge. Marla passed around drinks, Jamie handed out blankets, and Torres played soft music on the speaker. "You've got the makings of a good engineer," Marla told Carthen. "You stayed calm during chaos," Jamie added. "That's rare." Carthen looked at them. "Where I come from, we are trained to work without emotion. But I believe your way is stronger. Emotion connects action to purpose." Torres nodded. "Exactly. Fear tells us to be careful. Hope gives us reason to keep going. And kindness keeps us from falling apart," Jamie said. Carthen looked at his own hands. "Maybe I am not broken. Maybe I was made for something else." Marla smiled. "Maybe you were made to remind us what makes us human, even if you're not." The crew laughed lightly. Carthen didn't laugh, but he smiled again. slightly wider this time. That night, Carthan sat in his room, watching the stars outside. The storm had passed, but its memory stayed with him, not because it was dangerous, but because it had shown him something clear. In the storm, he had chosen not to hide. He had chosen to help, not because he was ordered to, but because he wanted to. He touched the small music device Marla had given him. It now held a new tune, one made from human and Zoran sounds mixed together. Like him, he was no longer just a visitor. He was becoming something more. Carthan stood on the observation deck of the Dawnbreaker, looking out at the glowing space station in the distance. The humans called it Orion's Reach, a peaceful trade hub filled with many species, including humans, aliens, and androids. Lights blinked like stars all over its round structure. Ships came and went in silence. He had never seen anything like it. It's beautiful, isn't it? Jamie said as she walked in beside him. Yes, Carthan replied softly. So many beings, so many sounds. No one fighting, no one afraid. That's what this place is for, Jamie said. It's a safe zone. No weapons allowed. Just talking, trading, and resting. Carthan nodded, but inside he felt something more. A quiet nervousness. He had not been around other species before. What if they feared him? What if they saw him and turned away? Jamie must have read his silence. She placed a hand gently on his arm. They won't judge you, not here, and you're with us. Those last words stayed with him. You're with. Source of the crew docked at Orion's Reach and stepped off the ship together. The station's hallways were wide and clean. Strange scents filled the air. Spices, oils, even flowers. Languages buzzed in every direction, from sharp clicks to soft whistles. Carthan walked slowly, eyes wide with wonder. Torres laughed. Feels like your first festival, huh? It feels alive, Carthan answered. They entered a small gathering hall filled with traders and visitors. In the corner, a group of humans played music. A tall alien danced slowly to the rhythm. Another read poetry aloud to a small crowd. Jamie pointed to a table covered in painted stones. Want to try something new? Carthan nodded. He picked up a small blue stone and looked at it closely. The vendor, a four-eyed merchant, smiled. That one's called a memory stone. People write feelings on it. Carthan tilted his head. Feelings? On a stone? With words, the vendor said, or a symbol. Carthan held the stone for a moment. Then he took the small tool beside it and slowly carved a soft swirl into it, a Zoran symbol for beginning. When he finished, he handed it back. Keep it, the vendor said kindly. Some beginnings are worth holding. Carthan thanked him and tucked the stone safely into his pocket. Later, the crew visited a cultural archive. Marla showed Carthan how humans recorded history through music, painting, and spoken stories. There were holograms of ancient Earth, recordings of first contact missions, and even drawings made by children from other planets. Carthan stopped at a display of found family, a human concept of people becoming close like family, even without blood ties. This is what you all are to each other, he said quietly. Marla nodded. Yeah, we come from different places, but we care. That's what matters. Carthan looked down. Zoran, do not use the word family once we leave our home pods. We become units, function-based. Jamie, standing nearby, said gently, That sounds lonely. It was, Carthan admitted, but not anymore. The three stood in silence for a moment. Then Jamie smiled. Come on, there's one more place you should see. They entered a quiet garden at the top of the station. Artificial light made it feel like a soft sunset. Strange alien flowers glowed gently. A fountain in the center made peaceful water sounds. The crew sat together on the grass. Torres shared some snacks. Jamie told a story about her first flight. Marla made a joke about space food being worse than rocks. Carthan listened, and then, for the first time, he shared a story of his own. Not about rules or systems, but about a memory. A small light he once saw as a child. He didn't know what it was, but he had followed it feeling wonder. That wonder, he said, is what I feel now. No one laughed or looked confused. Instead, they nodded. They understood. Carthan leaned back, watching the stars through the glass dome above. He didn't feel like an outcast anymore. He felt like a part of something. As they prepared to return to the Dawnbreaker, the station's council sent a message to the crew. They had reviewed Carthan's help during the Nebula storm and his peaceful interaction with others on the station. We would be honored, the message read, to offer Carthan a place in the Orion Alliance as a cultural link to the Zoran species, should he choose it. The crew was quiet. Carthan's eyes widened. They want me as a link? You've done more than survive, Marla said. You've connected. It's your choice, Jamie said kindly. But whatever you decide, we're with you. Carthan looked out at Orion's reach one last time before boarding the ship. In his pocket, he felt the small stone. A beginning. He took a deep breath and whispered, Yes, I choose to stay. Not because he had to, but because now he belonged. The Dawnbreaker floated gently outside Orion's reach. Inside the ship, things felt calm, yet something important was about to change. Carthan sat in the small meeting room with the crew. The table was covered with documents from the Orion Council, digital records, and a simple message. We welcome Carthan as the first Zoran ambassador to Orion's reach. Let peace grow from understanding. The words were short but powerful. I still cannot believe it, Carthan said quietly. Torres leaned back in his chair. Believe it. You earned it. Jamie nodded. You didn't just come here. You connected. You listened. You shared. That's more than most people ever do. Marla added. You're the bridge now, between your people and everyone else. Carthan looked down at his hands. But the Zoran High Circle, they will not accept me. They may even reject me fully. They might, Jamie said gently. But maybe, one day, they'll listen too. Carthan looked around at his human companions. They had given him something he had never known: choice. Now it was his turn to decide his future. Later that day, Carthan stood alone in his room. He held the memory stone in one hand and a small Zoran communicator in the other. He took a breath and pressed the button. A cold voice answered. This is the Zoran Home Authority. Identify. This is Carthan, former technician of knowledge. Pod 6. There was silence for a few moments, then another voice came, slightly older but just as sharp. You are considered lost. You left your station without permission. Why are you contacting us? Carthan spoke with a steady voice. I have found something beyond our teachings. I have lived among humans. I have learned emotion, art, trust. Emotion is weakness. No, Carthan replied, stronger this time. Emotion is connection. It is what your system lacks. The voice was silent again. Then, coldly, your message has been recorded. You are no longer part of the Zoran Order. The line went dead. Carthan closed his eyes. His hand tightened around the stone. He was now officially an outcast, and yet he felt no fear. The next morning, the crew of the Dawnbreaker held a small gathering. Not a party, not a ceremony, just a quiet moment together before their next journey. Jamie made tea. Torres brought music. Marla handed Carthan a small object wrapped in cloth. He opened it slowly. Inside was a small badge shaped like a star, with two hands reaching toward each other. One human, one alien. It's the symbol of cultural unity on Orion's reach, Marla explained. You don't need to wear it, but we thought, maybe, you'd want it. Carthan looked at the badge for a long time. I will wear it with respect. The crew smiled. Jamie raised her cup. To our friend, to the bridge he's building. They all repeated softly. To the bridge. As the Dawnbreaker prepared to leave, Carthan stood at the docking bay with Marla. I will not be joining the next trip, he said. Marla nodded. We figured. I must begin my work here, he added. I will speak to others, learn more, And, one day, try to speak to the Zoran again, not with anger but with truth. You'll be good at it, Marla said. You already are. Carthan hesitated, then asked, Will I still be welcome on this ship? Marla looked surprised. Always. You're family now. Our door stays open. He gave a small smile. That word, family, I am beginning to understand it. They shook hands in a quiet goodbye. No tears, no grand speeches, just understanding. That evening, Carthan walked through the Orion Gardens again, this time alone. He watched others pass by. Humans, aliens, even Zoran, who had never left the rules of home. But he walked differently now, not in hiding, not in fear. He sat beneath the same glowing tree and brought out a small tablet. He began to write his first message as an ambassador. To all who feel lost, know this. Belonging is not given. It is found. It is built with trust, with kindness, and with courage to be different. I was called an outcast. Now I am a voice. Not for one people, but for many. He paused, then added, If you hear my words, I invite you to speak. We are stronger when we speak together. He sent the message into the open channel. A message for anyone willing to listen. Even the Zoran, even the stars. From outcast to bridge. Carthan had made his choice, and for the first time in his life, that choice was truly his. A month had passed since Carthan became the first Zoran ambassador to Orion's reach. Life had changed in many small but meaningful ways. He no longer walked with his eyes down. He no longer feared silence. Instead, he spoke. He listened. And most importantly, he was heard. Every day, new visitors came to the cultural center where Carthan worked. Some were humans, curious about Zoran knowledge. Others were aliens, eager to share their own traditions. Some were outcasts, like him, those who had left their homes in search of belonging. Carthan greeted each one with calm respect. He learned their songs, their stories, their ways of thinking, and he shared his own, not as a teacher, but as a friend. One quiet morning, Carthan received an unexpected message. It came through a secure channel rarely used by outsiders. He opened the file, expecting maybe a council request or a cultural document, but instead, a familiar voice spoke. This is Yarneth of Zoran Pod 7. I received your message. Carthan froze. Yarneth had been his study partner many cycles ago. A quiet Zoran who followed every rule just like Carthan once had. I heard your words, Yarneth continued. I listened, and I felt something I have never felt before. Curiosity, doubt, and hope. Carthan's hands trembled slightly. I do not understand emotions, Yarneth said, but I want to try. If there is room at Orion's reach, I would like to visit. Carthan leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes for a moment. This was the start of something, not just a single connection, but a wave. That evening, Carthan sat with Jamie and Torres in a cafe at the edge of the station. Music played softly, and the lights were dim and warm. I received a message today, Carthan said. Torres raised an eyebrow. From your people? Yes. One of them wants to come here. To learn. Jamie smiled brightly. That's amazing. Carthan. It is only one, he said. But it's the first one, Jamie replied. That's how everything begins. Torres lifted his glass. To new beginnings. They clinked their cups together. Carthan looked around at the room. So many beings. So many faces. And yet no one was alone. That, he now believed, was the true strength of humanity. They made space for others. The next day, Carthan stood before a group of visitors at the Unity Hall, a large chamber used for peaceful meetings. He wore a robe with both Zoran and Orion symbols on it. On his chest was the badge Marla had given him. I was once silent, he began. I followed rules, not dreams. I feared questions. He paused, letting his words settle. But then I met people who showed me kindness, people who laughed, cried, and made mistakes but kept going. They showed me that being different does not mean being wrong. The crowd listened closely. Now I ask you, Carthan said, to share your own stories. Let us build something better, together. The audience clapped, not loudly, but with honest warmth. One by one, people stood and shared their voices. And Carthan listened, not as a Zoran, not even as an ambassador, but as someone who understood. Later that week, the Dawnbreaker returned. Jamie, Marla, and Torres stepped out of the ship, carrying small gifts and wide smiles. You miss us? Marla teased. Carthan nodded. More than I expected. They walked together through the gardens. Marla handed him a small notebook filled with handwritten human poems. Torres brought a model of the Dawnbreaker, made by a child they had helped. Jamie quietly gave him a photo. It was of the four of them, sitting under the glowing tree weeks. I thought you'd want to keep this, she said. Carthan looked at the photo for a long time. I will place it where all can see, so they know where my journey truly began. That night, Carthan stood at the same window where he had once feared rejection. Now he saw it differently. It wasn't the stars he focused on. It was the space between them. The space where bridges could be built. The space where voices could meet. The space where hope could grow. He opened his journal and wrote, "Belonging is not given. It is built. With every kind act, every honest word, every moment of trust, we shape the future." He paused, then added, "And no matter where we are born, we all have the right to reach for that future together." He closed the book and turned off the lights outside. The stars continued to shine. But now Carthan was not just watching them. He was part of their story.